Right, hi everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So today I'm going to be joined by a good friend of ours at the Happy Startup School, and who was at our summer camp a few months back. So welcome to Jeremiah Gardner. Hi, Jeremiah.
Hey, Lawrence, how's it going? Hi, happy startup, folks.
So this is one of a series of hangouts we're doing with sort of leading minds in the field of startups and innovation, and we're putting this on mainly for our homeschool students who are part of this online program that we're running, but also there'll be a few joining us from the community itself. So thanks for joining me. We're going to try and keep it brief. These are kind of 15-minute kind of insights, and so yeah, it's always a challenge to keep it to 15 minutes, so I'll try and keep stum. So I'd like to maybe get Jeremiah just to tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you do. I understand that you've had a book launch recently, so maybe tell our people all around that.
Yeah, my name is Jeremiah Gardner. Obviously, I am the author of the Lean Brand, and the Lean Brand is really the first book to apply lean principles to the idea of brand development. And we're really trying to kind of shift the way that we think about and approach branding. I think it's it's changed so much. The world has changed that we need some fresh ideas on how to approach that. And yeah, the book launched about 2 months ago now, and we've been very lucky to see the success of it and have our early adopters really behind us and passionate about us and out there spreading the word. And then I just got off of a 35-day book tour all around the U.S. and Canada, where we got to do tons of events and meet amazing people and speak about the book and speak about really brand innovation, what that means today.
Cool. And so what was it that got into the whole brand development, and specifically, I suppose, focused on the lean methodology, really?
Yeah, so the way I think about this is that in branding there's this myth called the myth of the brand genius, which is that there's this, brand genius on top of a 40th floor high-rise somewhere, sitting in a seat that costs more than any of us have made, in the last year, and that just due to his or her genius can create a brand that everyone will love and a strategy that's infallible and simply hand it to this company to execute. And the way that I came to this was really, I call myself a recovering brand genius. I was in the industry, climbing kind of the client ladder, as they call it within the kind of industry world, and just kind of had this epiphany. I don't know what happened, if it was something I ate that morning or what, this wasn't working and wasn't creating value. And so the question became, are brands valuable? If they are, what are they? And where are they most valuable? And so that led me to kind of ask those hard questions and take a hard look at what we call branding and see where those things kind of need some innovation and need some new thought, new light.
Cool. Because yeah, no, I mean, our background before we set up the startup school was very much agency focused, and I know maybe we got a bit disillusioned with some of the agency world in terms of, you were trying to, like you said, sit there in your ivory tower trying to predict the future and carve out this great vision. So would you say that you got a bit frustrated with kind of, trying to be this guardian of these amazing brands that you're creating?
Yeah, I think that that's the big thing, is that in the agency world, it's about, and for a startup, I think the most important thing is that you can't ever think about outsourcing your brand and expecting radiant results, right? And so an agency can be extremely helpful as an asset along the journey, but it can never create that journey for you. And so when you talk about agency world and the difference now for me is I have no interest really becoming an agency ever again or doing agency work, because that's about the microcosm of the problem. I'm really interested in helping entrepreneurs and startups understand how to even approach the problem of brand from the first standpoint, so they can go into those meetings with clear objectives about what they need from an agency or a third party that they're going to work with.
Mm-hmm. And so in terms of, like, I mean, I know you talked a bit about the traditional myth of the brand. Would you say that the existing model is broken then? And if so, what would you say is the best way of tackling it, particularly for a startup starting out now? Because we've got a big group of entrepreneurs in our community, and I wouldn't say developing a brand is number one priority for them. So I suppose how they can engage with this in a way that actually makes sense for them, but could help them build their business quicker, maybe.
Sure. So I think any productive discussion about brand has to start with some definitions, because we use the word brand in a million different ways, right? So it's a noun when we say a brand. It's a verb when we say we need to brand ourselves, or if we just brand ourselves. It's a possessive noun when I say it's my brand or your brand, and because it's a synonym when we say things like top-rated brands in cross-channel advertising today, and so there's a lot of confusion about the word and what those 5 letters in sequence mean. And so to me, when I say brand, I mean the relationship between an organization and an audience. So a brand is, capital I-S, that relationship. And so the fundamental question to ask is, how does that relationship develop? What are the ways that I can start to work on that relationship and iterate with, the way that I'm building that with my audience? And so a lot of entrepreneurs say, when's the right time to start working on brand, or when I'm funded, I'll start thinking about my brand, and most of the time they're talking about their logo or color scheme or some sort of mission statement or things, and none of those things really matter in the building of the relationship early on. And so the fundamental thing is that if you have ever mentioned your idea or shown your product or pitched it to somebody or even sold it, more importantly, to somebody, you're already relationship building, which means you're already doing brand. And so what we're trying to help entrepreneurs do is really become intentional about that work, rather than just kind of letting it happen outside of the scope of what they might want or what their audience might want out of that relationship together.
Mm-hmm. I think we're loving that.
Joined us.
Yeah, we're loving the dog in the background.
That's Sir Hamilton. He's running around, owns the house. So
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it comes back to what I've said for a long time: is every interaction counts, right? So like you said, whether it's pitching at an event or the interface of your app or your email between you and your client, that's an opportunity to make an impression with someone. So if you get that right or wrong, then that can lead you in different ways, right?
Well, I think you can get it right and wrong. I think it's not about the pressure of nailing every interaction. It's really about the idea of, can I learn, and what do I need to learn in the building of that relationship? And so running low-level experiments in order to learn about how that relationship's developing, what our audience demands, and what they want of us, and whether or not we like our audience. I mean, some startups get running and they have this audience and they don't like them, and that's not really intended on having around their product or the problem that they're trying to solve. And so we think that there's a way to experiment around the development of value in the relationship that develops, that you can pass and fail, but there's either learning, or there's only learning and there's not learning. And so what are the action that you're taking, what is the intention that you have around learning specifically in the relationship that's being built, and what's the metrics that you're going to measure the success or the failure of that activity. So maybe giving you an example, if for instance I want to host a webinar, and I think that this is something that people really want out of the relationship with me, well, I might say, okay, I'm going to start small, I'm going to run a small one, I'm going to invite 10 people, and success for me is going to be if 7 people say yes and show up and sit on the webinar, right? And so I can run that experiment in the way that I'm going to reach them, and let's say that 3 people show up. Well, we failed in that experiment. And so it's not that I bury my head in the sand and say I'm a failure. I'm going to go back. No one cares about this relationship. Instead, I say there's only 3 things that can go wrong. One, I measured the wrong metric. So it wasn't about how many people showed up. It was about how many people clicked the link or something like that, or watched it after the live hangout. 2, I'm speaking to the wrong people. Or 3, I built the wrong thing. A webinar is the wrong thing. And so we hypothesize about which one of those we got wrong. We can iterate on that, and then we can run that test again. And all of this is to discover where the value comes through in the relationship that you're developing with your audience, right? And so that's a quick and dirty, example of an experiment that you can run, or that I actually have run. So does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I know you've, well, at summer camp back in September, you ran a session around the minimum viable brand. And you've got various tools and frameworks in the book which you can use to kind of get started as an entrepreneur. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? And, I suppose an easy way for people to engage with this. You've talked about experiments, but is there kind of a way that they can sort of measure progress and kind of see this as maybe a part of a bigger strategy?
Yeah, so just like any relationship, those running those experiments and developing them takes something from you, right? You've got to start it. You've got to put some sort of input. And so the way that we think about this is that you can do it at a minimum viable level. So both of those words are important. Minimum meaning reduces the amount of waste that you're going to create, and is the smallest, the quickest, not potentially the cheapest. Lean doesn't mean cheap or quick. It means the elimination of waste and the discovery of value. And so minimum really defines that, and then viable means whether or not it's viable enough to generate the data that you are trying to generate to make the learning, right? So minimum viable brand is really that minimum viable relationship. And so what do I need to put in order to develop that relationship, or at least test in that way? And we think there's kind of three important components to start to work on. One is story. And we could talk probably for another 45 minutes to an hour just on that one point alone. But what I would say is that every startup starts with a set of founders or a founder that care passionately and deeply about the problem that they're solving. And no one can develop that story but you. And so there's a reason that you jumped into being a startup. There's a reason that you are starting to take this journey, or this is your 7th startup, or choosing to do it again. And that's unique to you. And so it's not about the right set of words or the right phrases or even the buzzwords, or polish. It's about why did you do this, and what are you trying to accomplish? What problem are you trying to solve, and why should I care? That's story. It's not about the narrative so much as it is about why. Simon Sinek's idea, why are you doing this? That's where people connect. And then at some point you need to express that story, and so we talk about them in terms of artifacts. So what's the one thing, or the minimum set of artifacts that you need in order to tell that story? And so a lot of entrepreneurs immediately think they win a pitch contest and they say, oh, I have $10,000, and we say, what are you going to do with it? And I wait for someone to say, I'm going to Disneyland. I'm just going to spend it all, right? But most of the time, I'm going to get a logo and a color scheme and these things, and we go, oh no, don't do that, because those may not be the most reflective things of that story early on. And so a logo is just a placeholder for something much deeper. And so if you think about the relationship with your friends, a logo is your friends are no more phone numbers in your phone than a logo is your brand, right? And so
I love the line. I think it might have been on one of your events that you said, take that money you would have spent on business cards and take your 5 most passionate customers down on a pub crawl.
Yeah, exactly, right? Or, yeah, exactly. What experience could you create for them? Or how could you take that same amount of money and invest in time and invest in something that is that relationship? And this is freeing. It should be freeing to say there's no set amount of things you need to become a real business, right? You don't need to have a logo and letterhead and a team at yourwebsite.com email address to be taken seriously as a business. What you need is to discover 5 people that care about you deeply and about what you're trying to accomplish, and that have that shared pain or that shared passion that you're trying to solve, and then get as close as you can to them and start to learn from them. And so pub crawl is a great example to do that. And then the last piece of a minimum viable brand is really an invitation, and that's to ask the question, what are you inviting them to? It's not about the right messaging or those things. It's about what are you inviting them to do. And you're inviting them on a shared journey towards value. What are you asking me as an audience member to do? How do I get engaged? How do I make this a part of my life and become a part of your journey?
Sure. We could link that back to, I think, one of the first things we did when we launched was create a simple landing page with a bit about our mission at the Happy Startup School, and then just a simple manifesto and a pledge that people could take if they wanted to support what we were doing. And for us, it was a great vindication for what we're trying to do because loads of people supported it, and it also helped us build that bond early on, I suppose, with a small bunch of people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, a landing page is one test, and in the book we give a bunch of examples of experiments that you can run. And when you think about a landing page, you can test a lot of different things on the web, and most of that can be really hard data points, but you have to still analyze. As people came to your website, you have to figure out where did they come from. What's the link that they clicked on, and why would they care about that, and what's the impact of them coming to us and giving their email address, and now what do we do with that email address and in the building of that relationship. And so I think it's not just about the set of things that we think we need. We think we need a website, and we need a phone number, and we need these sort of things to make us a real business. And what you need to be a real business is customers. And so the bottom line is what matters to your customers and what's authentic to you. The merging of those two things is where the relationship is going to occur.
Sure. And so in terms of like startups that are out there that have done this well or doing this well, any examples for people to get inspired or get some tips on how to do this stuff and take something from that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I love to tell the story of Buffer. If you've used Buffer at all, great social media sharing app, and they're kind of growing into their own as well. But their founder talks about the first time that he really approached Buffer, had the idea, was he had the idea. He said, okay, I think people would care about this. I think it would matter. So how do I test that? And what he did was he put up this landing page, and it said, Buffer is here. It's basically showed the world that Buffer existed, even though it didn't. The product hadn't been built. And he said, will you, click to see the pricing? And so people would click over, and all he was measuring is whether or not people were interested enough to click on the pricing tab. And once you clicked on the pricing tab, it would say something like, oh, well, we're still working on it. We'll get back to you in a minute. Enter your email address. So he measures the success of that, and he says, okay, people are clicking through and want to know how much it would cost. And so he creates a secondary page, right? Second page that just says, here's the 3 tiers of Buffer you can pay for. And so the people click on the first one, they click on the second one, and he's measuring how many people are clicking the $5, the $10, or the $15. And people click the $5. He says, okay, great. Sorry, we'll get back to you. Buffer's not ready. We'll get right back to you. Enter your email address. And so it's a smoke test, right? It's really saying we have something that exists, but it doesn't really exist, to test whether or not people would, in their behavior, would actually pay for it. So that's a way to test demand. What ends up happening is, out of that email address, they build a product. They find that there's demand for the product. And he builds a very minimum version of it in the beginning, and he launches it to those people that gave him his email address. And he tells this story about, now they're I think a $4 million a year company, year-over-year growth, doing amazing stuff, becoming really well known for their transparency as an organization, all these types of things, large success in terms of a startup. But he goes back a few years ago and says, I remember the first time that someone entered their credit card, and I remember his name, and he names his name. And he says, I remember him because he entered his credit card, he paid for the service, he got it, and I saw that email come through, and I was jumping around my living room because I couldn't believe that someone would pay, and that I was making money in this way. And so the next thing that he did was he took that person's email who paid him, did some research on him, found out he was a photographer, looked at his website, looked at the stuff, all the photography, emailed him directly from joel@gmail.com, right? And said, hey, love the photography you had, love to hear more about, your uses of Buffer, blah, blah, blah. And that relationship blossomed and grew and became a really foundational to the growth of Buffer. And so the moral of the story here is that one passionate customer is worth its weight in gold. And so too often entrepreneurs think about how do I get 1,000 customers, or how do I build my tribe of 1,500 people, or my network effects app is going to take 2,000 people. So how do I get 2,000 people on here? And the question that we should be asking is how do I get one? And if I can get one passionate customer, can I turn one passionate customer into two? Can I experience 100% growth, right? And do I understand how that person became passionate about me and what they're passionate about? Or as you guys kind of talk about different metrics, or why they love me, or if they love me or they like me, right? And if I can do that, then I can start to scale this in a way that I know who I'm creating value for, I know the value that I'm creating, and I know the impact that I'm having in that relationship. And that's really what the Lean Brand's really all about, is to teach you that that's the starting point for the tribe of people that are going to support your business and become passionate.
Sure. I'm conscious of time, but in terms of like that approach, I mean, how much do you think it's about caring for your customers? I mean, Joel's kind of, obviously in tune with what his customers want and is hungry for that and actually gets a buzz from it. Do you think that it's really about then working for people that you really care about and feel passionate about and finding a customer segment that resonates with you? Or do you think you can learn this stuff and learn to be more, I suppose, develop more empathy with your customers and wanting to solve their problems?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you're doing. I mean, some people set out to really say, I'm passionate about this, group of people because I am one of them, right? And so I want to solve their problems. So you may be, completely agnostic about the product or the problem that you're trying to solve, and just passionate about a group of people, and that's one direction you can go. And I think there's a number of things that, for instance, GoPro is a great example of that. Is passionate about action sports, early surfers in the beginning, and that's what he was doing was surfing, and he wanted to figure out a better way to capture that, and that's turned into a huge market, right, and a huge success. And so that's passion around a group of people or a market segment. And then there's also passion about for you about a problem that you want to solve. So every time I turn on the water, I get burned, and I want to solve that problem. And so then you have to be a little bit more market agnostic. So who has that problem? Where is that problem the deepest felt? And how do I discover, multiple markets within that specific problem? And so a market segment, remember, is always defined not by age or demographics or location and these things. It's defined only by a shared pain or a shared passion. And so what is the shared pain of your audience? Or what is the shared passion? And then the next question becomes, and how do we deliver value to them? And so sometimes that's through products, sometimes that's through the passion around that you have for that particular market segment. It really depends on what type of business that you're jumping into and why you're getting started in it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, it's amazing how quickly these little sessions go. I think we're over time already. But just before you head off, I know the book's out. We've got a big audience in the UK over here. It's out in the UK, right, as well? It is.
It's available, yeah.
Cool. And I know there's a lot of goodness in there, and I know loads of people from summer camp have gone off and got loads of value from it. And in terms of, you mentioned you might be in the UK sometime next year. Is that still in the pipeline?
Yeah, I'm hoping to make it happen. We're thinking about. I want to come out and at least speak a few times. So nothing solid yet, but as soon as dates are solid, I'll let you and your community know for sure. Cool.
And if people want to reach out to you in the meantime, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, so you feel free to send me an email if you'd like. The letter J, at jeremiahgardner.com. I'm Jeremiah Gardner on Twitter, Jeremiah Gardner on LinkedIn. You can Google search me. I mean, I'm pretty accessible, and I'd love to help you along your journey in terms of building those passionate audience.
Awesome. And always in the black T-shirt, as far as I remember. Is that right? Still?
I got one on. But it's cold. For San Diego, it's cold, I should say. We're in the the 50s. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's not much above freezing here, so yeah, you got no sympathy.
Yeah, you guys are warm, but I had to wear some sort of jacket.
Cool. All right, John. Thanks a million for spending this time with us today, and yeah, we look forward to catching up with you soon.
Absolutely. Have a great one, Laurence, and keep on building those relationships.
Okay, take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.